Tokenization around the world has been heating up, and I've always said that the key piece to tokenization at scale is going to be stablecoins. Stablecoins are the main enabler of tokenization at scale. It's very simple, right? When you have something on chain in tokenized form, you're going to need to transact, buy, sell, trade, maybe even borrow against, lend, you name it. You're going to need a stable value asset, aka stablecoins, on chain to do those transactions with. And these are going to be tokenized fiat currencies. We already have USD on chain and a ton of other fiat currencies as well in stablecoin form. But the main thing that we talk about and the main thing that we actually focus on when it comes to Ripple and even XRP is ROUSD. Now, if we go back to the beginning of July, BNY Global did put out a post regarding the fact that BNY was selected to serve as the primary reserve custodian of Ripple's enterprise-grade stablecoin, Ripple USD. BNY and Ripple are jointly committed to paving the way for digital asset adoption at institutional scale, and together are helping to bridge the gap between the traditional finance and cryptocurrency ecosystems. Now, this was a huge update because, number one, BNY is one of those blue chip TradFi institutional players that has over $50 trillion in assets, which is just insane. And when we're thinking about that, the fact that they're partnered up with Ripple for ROUSD reserves is a shock to the entire space because, again, this is one of the largest traditional financial giants in the world partnering up with Ripple to be the primary reserve custodian of ROUSD. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this back up, because again, this happened back in the beginning of July, well, it's because of this announcement. So, breaking, Eden X selects BNY for investment management and custody services for its tokenized U.S. Treasury bills fund, T-bill. The integration of Eden's tokenization platform with BNY's investment expertise and asset servicing capabilities marks a significant milestone in the evolution of RWAs, reinforcing our commitment to jointly support the end-to-end lifecycle of tokenized assets. Now, if we're thinking about that, right, let's go over here to two quotes. Number one, Eden's collaboration with BNY marks a critical milestone in our mission to deliver secure, transparent, and institution-ready tokenized financial products. Combining our tokenization platform with BNY's global scale and deep fiduciary expertise enables us to create a new standard for trust and access in the digital asset space. BNY plays a critical role in the digital asset ecosystem, serving as a trusted bridge between traditional finance and emerging technology for clients. We are excited to extend our time-tested liquidity investment management capabilities and asset safekeeping services to enable T-bill, and are proud to collaborate with Eden as we jointly aim to support the end-to-end lifecycle of tokenized assets. Now, what's crazy about all of this is because we know going back to August 1st of 2024, Eden actually partnered up with Ripple to introduce tokenized US Treasury bills onto the XRP Ledger. That's right, T-bills. The same exact thing that's being addressed over in this announcement from August 13th, 2025 with BNY. And if we actually go over here to the XRP Ledger on RWA.xyz, $190 million tied to it, up 60+% in the last 30 days. You can actually see that Eden is the second largest value on the XRP Ledger at 75.5 million. This is up 1,300% in the last 30 days. But Eden themselves has about $560 million on chain. This is actually up about 15% in the last 30 days. Most of that value is tied to Ethereum. Outside of XRP, you have Solana, Arbitrum, and Base. But what's crazy about this is, you know, we are starting to see these big players that are tied back to the XRP Ledger or tied back to even Ripple working with big names like BNY, which Ripple is also working with. I find this very interesting. We're starting to see the convergence happen in real time. And of course, when it comes to the XRP Ledger, the value is growing significantly here. The value in this space has been pretty flat, though. I mean, 13.13 billion, not much has changed in the last 30 days in terms of tokenized value. I do think that we are going to see a much larger view of this space going forward. And what I mean by that is, you know, we are starting to see those regulatory moves being made in the US and outside of the US as well. I know Hong Kong has been making a lot of strides around tokenization. I do see this value. It's kind of frozen right now. I think that's kind of in that phase where we're just kind of waiting for regulatory, decisions to be made. But this value will grow significantly over time. In fact, Ripple is looking at $19 trillion. Okay. If we go back to that announcement, this is that announcement. And this got announced 3 days ago. Ripple eyes $19 trillion tokenization boom as institutional adoption accelerates. Ripple is positioning itself at the forefront of a $19 trillion revolution as institutional grade custody accelerates real-world asset tokenization across treasuries, gold, equities, real estate, and global markets. And yeah, listen, tokenization is expected to boom in a much larger way. Even if we have to wait a little bit, I'm totally fine being patient here because I know that it's going to be worth the wait. Currently speaking, there's about $13 billion on chain compared to 19 trillion. That is a crazy amount of growth. And when we're looking at the list here, we know XRP is at number 9 currently in terms of RWA value. Over here, we do have, XRP Ledger take the lead. XRP Ledger just ranked number 2 in RWA TVL growth over the last 30 days because it is starting to gain a lot in terms of the last 30 days. I mean, up 50+%. If we actually look at the last 30 days, I believe it's actually over here in the full market overview. So if we're looking at the last 30-day gains here, yeah, XRP is up about 60, almost 1%. Comparable to like Binance Smart Chain, it's starting to get some RWA value added to it, which is why it's up 1,500% plus. But we are starting to see the value on the XRP Ledger growing, which we want to see. We love to see this. This is very good. And we have here that tokenization momentum is building. Is the XRP Ledger about to take the top spot soon? Now, it all depends on what spot we're looking at. I mean, in terms of like the number 1 spot here in the last 30-day growth, I'm not really, worried about that. I'm not really focused on that either. The main thing that I'm actually looking at is just the value across the board for networks. And again, some of these like ZK Sync Era, they're not a layer 1, so I kind of just scratched them off the board. But with Ethereum at 7 billion plus, I do suspect that a lot of these networks are going to grow significantly over the coming weeks and months ahead, especially as more and more announcements are made and a lot more money is actually flowing on chain. These things do take a little bit of time to actually hit public networks, so I do suspect that that will change very soon. And also on top of that, we have been hearing a lot of discussions around tokenization from the SEC. Here we actually have Justin, SEC Commissioner, drops big talk on tokenization regulation. Every day investors are flooding in. TradFi and crypto firms joining forces. The tokenized future is coming fast. Check this out.
But I do want to move on, and I want to talk about tokenization. That obviously another big hot topic of the moment. And when we're talking about everyday investors getting involved with tokenization, what are some of the risks in your view that could potentially come about?
Well, I think there has been a lot of interest in tokenizing securities and other real-world assets, and that's something that really opened up after the SEC changed its perspective on crypto. So we're seeing a lot of interest from traditional financial firms and native crypto firms. And there are different approaches that are being taken to tokenizing. So we will work with people. We're willing to work with people who are taking different approaches. But it's really important that people be very careful about disclosing what the nature of the asset is when you tokenize something. It's still a security. If you're tokenizing a security, it may be a security with different characteristics, and that's something that needs to be conveyed to investors. And it's also important to be aware of sometimes their trading restrictions or their restrictions on who can access particular types of securities. And so that's something people have to pay attention to.
And that's a point that you've made in the past, that tokenized securities are still securities. You do have some firms, I'm thinking of Robinhood, for example, rolling out tokenized stock trading. I believe that's taken hold in Europe. So, I mean, do you see that as a potential area where you could run into some of these confrontations over firms trying to really regulate and innovate and introduce measures such as that, but potentially coming up against some of these regulations that you're putting in place?
Well, without talking about any particular firm's approach, I think the bottom line is that we encourage firms to come in and talk to us. We expect that there will be some different approaches taken to tokenizing, and we're looking forward to working with folks to try those different models out and see what the market's like. and see whether or not tokenization of equity securities takes hold. I mean, that really will ultimately be up to the market. But what our message is that we're willing to work through different potential models with people.
So the SEC is optimistic now. They want to work with these players. They want to test things. And that's exactly where we're at right now in this market. Like this $13 billion that's on chain right now in RWA value. Guys, I want you to understand that this is just a test phase. Like this value is just these institutional players bringing on some of these asset classes on chain just to kind of see and test the waters. That's why right now, as these regulators are talking and addressing what's happening with tokenization, they want to, start to kind of test a few things and trial a few things. Once this testing phase is over, they're going to push into the scaling phase, where this number on chain is going to scale 5, 10, maybe even 100 times in a very fast amount of time. So when we think about what's going on here, we're also listening in on what these organizations are saying. The SEC, we even know that the US government just released a full document regarding tokenization and how they're, supporting it. But also the World Economic Forum. They just announced on the 12th, the financial markets are undergoing a quiet revolution powered by asset tokenization. Yeah, because it's happening. This is happening right now, and most people are not even paying attention to this. Like, if we actually look at what's being said within this, we have the financial markets are undergoing a quiet revolution powered by asset tokenization. Asset tokenization could make investing more accessible, faster, cheaper, and more transparent. When institutions, regulators, and tech providers come together to build trusted and interoperable frameworks, we are likely to see asset tokenization fulfill its potential. And that's exactly what's happening right now. And the next phase, like I said, is the scaling phase. And what's crazy about all of this is, it's trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. We know that the World Economic Forum put out a post back in 2021 where it talked about $867 trillion being disrupted by blockchain. That value has grown since 2021. It's been 4+ years now. So when we think about what's going on here, we are focused on Ripple. We are focused on these networks in the space like XRP that have massive amounts of money already tied to them. Obviously, there's some other good ones here as well. We could think about Stellar. We could think about even Ethereum technically. But the main thing that I'm looking at is all of the partnerships, all of the major collaborations that are happening. We know recently Ripple and Control Alt teamed up to support real estate tokenization. This happened on July 16th. Then also Ripple collaborated with Argix to bring hundreds of millions of dollars of tokenized real-world assets to the XRP Ledger. We also know that Ripple partnered up with Zonix back in 2024. This was all based around tokenization. And then also even Axler, the integration with Axler back in February 2024, this was also to support RWAs on chain. So when we think about what's going on here, all of the pieces are coming together for Ripple and even for the XRP Ledger and XRP. We even know on Ripple's website, right? And I've talked about this on so many different occasions. If we go to the solutions here, and I believe it was actually under custody, if you go to tokenization, you can see right off the rip in terms of the tokenization side of the Ripple website, it's all based around the XRP Ledger. So when we think about Ripple working with all these institutional players, working with enterprises, working with all these big, names, they want to bring all of these institutional players into the tokenization market through the XRP Ledger. And that's why we look at this $19 trillion boom that Ripple was looking to tap into, because they know that with institutional adoption accelerating more and more and more, the value on chain is going to scale as well. They also understand that we are just in the initial phase of tokenization. The value that we see on chain right now is absolutely nothing compared to the value that we are going to be targeting in the coming, years. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.